Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Arianna Davis, Senior Director of Editorial at Oprah Daily, and as an entertainment lover, as a film, TV, all the things lover, and also as a fellow Puerto Rican, I could not be more excited and thrilled to talk to the inimitable Rosie Perez today. Rosie, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Before we get started into what we hope will be a career retrospective into the amazing career that you've built, I wanted to share with anyone watching that if you are interested, the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given $6.5 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. So if you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and need help, please don't hesitate to ask. And if you can help, we ask that you please give. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Rosie. I mean, we have lots and lots to talk about, but I wanted to start from the beginning because you have such an interesting story with when did you first fall in love with acting? I know you had kind of like an interesting entry into acting, but when do you feel like you first fell in love with the art of acting?
I think it was after I went to the premiere of Do the Right Thing. And I was a college student. I was majoring in biochemistry. And so I saw it as a math equation, if you will, that was pretty cosmic. And I said, oh my goodness, look at this magic that has occurred. And that's when I fell in love with it. When I saw all the pieces put together and the magic of filmmaking. And I've always been a film lover and addicted to television. But really being a part of it and seeing how it really worked, that's when I remember sitting in the movie theater at the premiere, and I said to myself, this is what I want to do. And I remember there were tears going down my face. And one of my siblings goes, are you okay? And I went, mm-hmm, I'm very okay. So that's when I fell in love with it.
That just brought a tear to my eye. That it's like that moment of realizing your purpose, right? And that gives me chills. And I've always wondered when I look at you and your work, I always wonder how your passion and your love for dance versus acting, if there's a difference or if there's one that you love more, because for anyone watching who doesn't know the iconic story, you know, Rosie was discovered for Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee in a club, and she was dancing, and she has an incredible dance career as a dancer, as a choreographer on so many projects. So for you, was there ever a moment where you said, I want to just do one or the other, or where one ended up taking more precedence over the other?
Well, first of all, artistic expression is artistic expression, regardless of what form it may take on. Excuse me. And dance is similar to acting in the sense that you have to emote a certain expression and you have to pull the audience in and not really tell them what they're feeling, but get them to feel. Mm-hmm. And so that is the same in that regard. And as a choreographer, it's very similar in regards to the technical aspect of acting, where there is the preparation and the study and the discipline and learning your craft and putting the pieces together, if you will. I mean, even just blocking, same as marking, that's a dance term, marking the steps, the rhythm of it, the cadence of it, of your movement, of your body movement is kind of the same in regards to not just your vocalization as an actor, but also your body, you're gesturing. And also learning how to be very free after all the preparation and rehearsal has been done, in letting it go and soaring. And that's the hardest part for a dancer and an actor, you know, because you could be as prepared as you want to be, but if you're not in that moment, it's not as great as it can be. So it's very similar. And in regards to when I made the decision to concentrate on acting, there were other factors that decided it for me. I remember I was on the set filming Fearless, and I was on the phone with my assistant choreographer, Arthur Rainier, and he was taking over for the Fly Girls for me, but we were still choreographing together. And I'm a Virgo, so I have to know everything that's going on. And and I remember calling him and I go, well, how did this number go? Who wore what? Who got the, make sure she gets the camera shot, make sure that she gets the camera shot. And I remember Jeff Bridges, we were in the middle of shots. He goes, would you get off the damn phone? We're making a movie here. And I went, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. You know? and I remember I sat there and I started crying. He goes, oh, geez, I didn't mean to make you cry. I said, no, but you're right. And he goes, what? And I said, if one of my dancers was on the phone during a rehearsal, I would have lost it. I said, so I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I remember we hugged it out. And I remember that just stinging my soul, like, oh my gosh. And after that day, because my assistant choreographer, Arthur, kept calling and I finally had to shut off the phone. And I apologized and I said, I have to do this film. I have to concentrate on it. And I need to trust you to take over. And he went, what? Is this you speaking? And yeah, and when I went back to In Living Color after that, my head was someplace else. You know, and I didn't want my work as a choreographer to suffer because it wouldn't have been fair to the show or the dancers or to my assistant and the audience. And, you know, and so that was the beginning of me questioning, letting go. But the ultimate decision was the very last major thing that I choreographed for the music industry was a Soul Train Music Award opening. And my body just said, girl, you're getting old. You know, I cracked so many bones in my body and so many sprains and knees and I remember just realizing, oh my gosh, this is going to affect my acting. If I'm I don't know if you could look back on what are those things, whatever those websites where you see, you know, archival photos. There's a couple of premieres where I'm walking with a cane. And wow. Yeah, and I said, wow, maybe it's time. And it was after this, and it was ironic. Well, I wouldn't say ironic. It was interesting, I should say, that Soul Train was the deciding factor, because Soul Train was the beginning. And then it was the end. And that makes me choke up to this day. I got to help choreograph the Broadway play. I was in the Ritz, you know, and I got to dance on Broadway, and that was really fantastic and really hard. But even today, if I'm in the car, or if I'm at home in the shower, or at home listening to music, my mind is constantly choreographing. It hasn't stopped. And when I watch the BET Awards, my husband always grabs my hand and go, you okay? And I go, yeah, because I miss it.
Oh, I love that. So chills again. You're giving me so many chills. And I was wondering as you were talking, if, because you mentioned being on the set of Fearless, and I would imagine, you know, your first big break, as they say, was Do the Right Thing, and then you started in White Men Can't Jump, and then there was Fearless, which you were nominated for an Academy Award. So it sounds like during that era, you were still kind of having the push-pull between acting and dancing. What was it like for you realizing, wow, I've been nominated for an Oscar, for, you know, at the beginning of your career?
I think the reality of being nominated didn't sink in until a year after the awards. To be honest, I didn't understand that I was in a perpetual state of shock. You know, and also, to be honest, it was a little tainted, that journey, because so much of the press kept asking me, don't you think this is a fluke that you got nominated? I go, no.
Wow.
You know, the hidden racism and prejudice, because it wasn't just only about me being a Puerto Rican American, it was also me coming from a certain class structure, you know, and, you know, I said, I remember asking, did you ask any of the other nominees if they think it's a fluke? It's their first time being nominated as well. Or is this question only directed at myself, at me? You know, and so that's why I decided to take my father and my sister to the award show, because I needed that support. I didn't want to walk down the red carpet with that bitter feeling. And I didn't want to swallow that bitter pill because I didn't want to mess up the moment. And I'm so glad I had my family there, my father and my sister Carmen. But it really didn't sink in until after the fact, while I was sitting on the beach with my father eating ice cream. And I remember saying, I got nominated. And he fell out laughing. I was just like, oh my goodness, you know, so I think that's when it really came into my body. And then I was really able to, I mean, I appreciated the moment from the get-go, but I was just stunned. But after the shock was removed, then I was able to experience the joy and the wonderment and the excitement of it all. Yeah, so.
I mean, that's so unfortunate that it was tainted in that way. Not surprising, because I think even that's, you know, those are things that still happen now. But I love the way that you put that you allowed the joy came into your body. It's like at some point you allowed yourself to feel how amazing that moment was. And you've gone on to have so many incredible roles in film and in TV. I'm curious to know, how does Rosie Perez go about preparing for a role? You see a script that you love, you get the part. How do you prepare? What's that kind of creative process of knowing a character like for you?
Gosh, there's various steps. I think that one, from my dance background, is just repetition. You know, practice, and more practice. I read a script 50 million times, even to the point of the day that I'm going to shoot. I'm reading the script, and I don't read just my scenes. I read the script in its entirety. Because just like dance, you just don't rehearse or practice a certain part of it. You do that, and then you go back and rehearse the entirety of it so that you can understand how it all fits together. And of course, I researched the life of my character. I create a backstory that may not be there, or change it if it even is there, you know. So I listen to my inner thoughts, and it will dictate to me who she is, and it just consumes my entire life. where I could be cooking and then I'll just blurt out some dialogue. And at first my husband was like, who are you talking to? You know, but it's really about discipline for me, first and foremost. And then it's about allowing new techniques to be discovered or be brought in. Because when I was a choreographer and I would have a dancer who thought they knew everything about dance or thought they knew everything about the type of dance that we were doing, and I would see that it would stifle them. And I remember that. And I am learning more about acting right now than I have in my entire career. And it's so fascinating and elating. And it's just like, oh my gosh. And Jeff Bridges told me that. He told me that. He goes, oh, you're just going to keep learning. It's just going to get better and better. You know, and also Larry Fishburne. Oh, sorry, Larry. Lawrence. He didn't like to be called Larry. You know, we go way back. So, you know, and I remember him coming to a play that I did on Broadway, Frankie and Johnny, and he came to my dressing room and I went, what? He goes, you went another step higher. And I remember I went, oh my God, Larry, that means so much coming from you. And he goes, keep finding the steps though. This ain't it. You did great. Keep finding the steps. And that's what I've been doing. And it's amazing to be open like that, because even the TV show I'm doing now here in Spain, and there's a much, much younger cast, and I watch them and stuff, and some of them think they got it down, you know? And I go, oh, wow, you know, and that gives me actually more fuel. And they're very good, by the way, you know, but it gives me more fuel for the excitement of what I have chosen as this, you know, for my career, because I you know, I love boxing. I'm a boxing head. I'm a boxing fanatic. And then my boxing trainer, John Snow, told me that there's this old saying, don't try to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfection, but reach for excellence. Reach for excellence. And you only can do it if you stay at it, that you come to the gym every day, that you work out every day, that in your mind you're thinking about how to throw that punch, how to move away from that punch, how to do this. Everything is fine tuning. It's just fine tuning. And that's when you achieve excellence. And I said, oh, like Muhammad Ali? He goes, even Muhammad Ali, if he could keep fighting, he would still be striving for even greater excellence. That's the heart of a champion. And so that's what's exciting to me. I finally have gotten there. Everyone would say that to me, and I'll go, oh, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it. But it really, the turning for me really didn't happen until I was on Broadway. And then it really didn't happen. Then it really started to come into full consciousness about 15 years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to keep doing this. I can't wait. Oh, please, God, please let me keep doing it. So, yeah.
I love that idea of going to next steps. And I think, you know, you've had so many steps between film and TV. You even did The View, and which I imagine would be very different than doing Broadway. What was that experience like versus acting, where you're just being yourself on television? Was that a different experience for you versus your acting career?
Yes.
Enough said. Got it. And I mean, you have played so many incredible parts over the years. Is there any character that was especially difficult for you to embody? And was there any character that just really stayed with you that you loved and you've never been able to let go?
Not all, but I would say maybe 40% of the characters that I've played are still with me. I still think back on them. Some of them didn't stay. As to why, I have no idea. So it's difficult, and you would be so surprised as to which ones have stayed. Of course, Fearless has always stayed with me. White Man Can't Jump has always stayed with me. This movie I did with Forrest Whitaker for HBO called Criminal Justice stays with me.
I love that one.
The reason why is that, my God, I was so green. Oh my God. And sometimes things stay with me in the sense where I go, I wish I could do it again. I know I could do it better. I know I could do it better. When I did High Maintenance, that stays with me. Sometimes I daydream of the scenes I did with Guillermo Diaz. We had such chemistry. Oh my gosh, I would love to do another project with him. There's a movie called The Take that I did with John Leguizamo.
That was so good.
He's with me constantly. And I still haven't forgiven him from, okay, that's private. Anyway, so.
I'm like, what? Tell us.
It's pure vanity. I was like, oh my gosh, because he said, can you stay at that weight, actually put more weight on? I go, why? And he goes, I just think it'll be cute for the character. And, when I look back on it, I'm like, no. But I want to work with John Leguizamo again. The ones that stay with me are the ones where I want to work with the cast again. Or I want to work with the director again. Or I say to myself, I didn't get it right. Some people go, oh, are you kidding? That was amazing. I go, yeah, I'm a Virgo, and ex-choreographer. I strive for that, excellence. And so I just, but it's a beautiful thing. It's like reading a good book. And you think back on the book sometimes, like if you're just in a cab or you're walking over the bridge and you think about the book and you remember the characters and they're in your head and they're in your body and stuff like that. It's the same thing for me with film and television. It's just, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing that, I know the SAG audience is watching, that we get to do this, man. It's just like, awesome. It's just awesome. And I remember one of my sisters said, do you miss not becoming, the scientist that you wanted to be? And I said, I am a scientist. It's just now in an artistic form, But even then, I daydream of my days in college and, in organic biology lab, which was my favorite class, and things like that. I still think of it. It's all encompassing of my love for whatever I have ventured into or out of.
Do you still get nervous when you audition? That's one thing thinking about those who are watching, who are actors. Do you still find yourself nervous about the audition process, and how do you get over that nervousness of the process of going for a role?
I'm always nervous. I'm even nervous when I step in front of a camera every single time. I have this feeling of the butterflies, of the quivering, and and through boxing, I've learned to make it part of the process. And you always hear the veteran actors that you encounter and amazing directors that you've worked with saying, use it. And you're like, oh, yeah. In the back of your head, you're like, am I using it right? Am I doing it right? I feel like I want to throw up, And, but with boxing, calm and compose wins the fight. That's boxing. Calm and compose wins the fight. You cannot let your opponent see you sweat. Who's your opponent when you're acting in front of a camera? Yourself, And so it's learning all the breath techniques, all the mental exercises that you have to do in boxing, it has helped me immensely in my acting. But auditioning, I detest. I detest auditioning. And I would like to also say to my fellow peers out there, I will never, ever think I'm above it. If it's a role that I really, really want, and you want me to audition, you know, it's just an honest human response to think like, why are you going to make me audition? You know I can do this. You know, no actor ever admits that, you know, on camera, but that's what we all think, you know. And there's some auditions where you're like, oh, let me prove that I can do this, you know. But very rare do I think I want to audition for this. Like, you know, but all that said, I am never above auditioning for a role that I want. You can't be. You can't be. And that comes from choreography, because there were dancers that would come in and they thought they were too cool for school, and they had no idea what I wanted. It didn't matter if you were the best dancer. There were other things that I wanted for that music video or for that dance number that had nothing to do with your dance ability. And that's just a cold, hard fact. You know, that said, I never picked a dancer because of the color of their skin. Hello? Never. Never. It was about, yes, their dance ability, but also who they were as a person, regardless of color, regardless. It was who they were as a person. Can they bring that emotion that I needed for this number? You know what I'm saying? So, you know, or can they deliver a certain essence in regards to the physicality that I needed for this number? So when I go in an audition, I always remember that. And it presents a challenge like, I am going to show you that I am right for this. I am going to show you that I am right for this. I'm going to do everything in my power so that you can see me and see that I'm right for these. And another colleague of mine who's become a very, very good friend of mine, she was a producer on Untamed Heart. Her name is Marcy Learoff. I asked her one day if she could help me with my lines to prepare for a role. And an audition, I'm sorry. And she said, you know what your problem is, Perez? And I was like, what? And she said, your confidence as a dancer is not translating it into your acting. I said, what do you mean? And she said, when you were a dancer, you would walk into that audition like you already had the job. She says, walk into the room as if you already have the job. Changed everything for me. Changed everything for me. I still get scared. I still get nervous. I'm shaking like a leaf inside. But instead of viewing it as an audition, it's like, I got this. This is mine. What page do you want to go to?
On the outside. On the inside, you're still a little like, ee.
You're still like, but if you believe that, if you have that belief, that goes back to boxing. If you have that belief, it brings a certain calm to you. You'll still be nervous, but there's a calmness that allows you to be composed.
And I love what you said about, you know, bringing you to the audition. It reminds me, there's a Martha Graham quote that's something like, you know, there's only one you, and you can only channel one you when you dance. And I always think of that as a writer. When I write, it's like, you know, you get nervous. You're like, everyone could write this, but no one can write it the way I can, and no one can, you know, do that part the way that you can. And I think bringing you to something is what makes anything that you do special. And I think it's what made your role in The Flight Attendant super special, which I want to talk about. I have lots of questions about The Flight Attendant, but for anyone watching, how did The Flight Attendant come to be? How did you end up working on that project?
My manager called me up and said that HBO Max would like to make an offer on this new project. And I said no. And he said, oh God, I knew you were going to say that. Please don't say no. And I said, I don't like flying. I don't want to travel all over the world and be away from home. And, you know, it's my home life is pivotal to my emotional and mental health. And I'm just tired. And he said, I think you should at least take a second look at this. And I said, Tark, I said, no. And he goes, okay. Kaylee's going to call you. And I went, what? They called back and they said, Kaylee Cuoco says that she's not accepting no for an answer, and just give her 10 minutes over coffee at least before my final answer. And I said, all right. And that intrigued me. That intrigued me. She didn't send the other executive producers to come meet with me. She wanted to meet with me. And my first line to her was, I don't like flying. And she was like, oh, you know, it's the flight attendant. And we laughed and we high-fived. And that was it. The girl had me at hello. And it was also how we discussed work ethics. We both have a very strong work ethic. And that really sold me as well. And also I said, who's Megan? And she kind of gave me the one-liner. And she looked at me and she goes, but that's why we want you. We want you to help create this. I was like, oh, wow. You know, and so she didn't know it, but I had said yes to myself right then and there, but I was trying to play it cool because my reps told me to play it cool. That, you know, when I waved goodbye to her, yes. And I spoke with Steve Yockey as well too. And I really liked him a lot, as well as Meredith Lavender and Marcy Ullin. Everything was just clicking and coming together. And especially when I said to them, I think that your take on Megan is incorrect. And they all just burst out laughing. And I remember Steve Yockey said, okay, what do you think? I was like, what? You know, when television, you can ask me what I think, you know, it was like, oh my gosh. And I said, I don't think she's as put together and as sneaky as written. I think this is a woman who's having a midlife crisis, is always on the verge of having a nervous breakdown and trying to act like she has it all together, and is very lonely in her life, despite all the great things that she has. And they went, I said, anybody here is menopausal? They laughed, and I said, menopause is the reason for midlife crisis, whether you're male or female, because your hormones are surging the same way as when a woman, is menstruating for the first time or is pregnant for the first time. You lose your freaking mind. And it's the same way with menopause. It's another physiological change and physical change of your life. And that affects your mental and emotional well-being as well. And when that hits, if you aren't at a place where you're at least somewhat satisfied with your life, the crap is going to hit the fan. And I said, the crap is hitting the fan for Megan, and she doesn't realize it. And that's why she's making these horrible choices. That's why she thinks her best friend is an alcoholic, dangerously promiscuous train wreck, who's 20 years her junior. Why would a grown woman like that admire a girl like that? What is it? And it's because to Megan, Cassie represents freedom. She gets to do whatever she wants to do. And Megan never did. She just toed the line all her life and did everything right and did everything perfect and has the perfect husband and the perfect son and the perfect home. And she's still not happy. And I remember the executive producers go, "We love it, let's go." And I go, "Okay, I don't know how I'm going to articulate that though. I need help."
Okay, can we get that in the script somewhere? Like, can we,
And what they delivered was phenomenal, as you can see. And Susanna Fogel, I mean, she was just right there with me, the director. I mean, you know, it is a wonderful thing for an actor to have everyone there just going, "Soar, we got you." Like, that's amazing. Not, "Okay, we're gonna hold your hand and manipulate you and tell you how to fly." No, they're saying, "Fly. We're right with you and we got you." And they were there the whole time, like, "A little bit more to the left. No, right here. No. Yeah, that's it. That's the spot," you know? And there were a lot of times where they just went and backed off and let me do my thing. And it was such freedom on that set, but with freedom comes responsibility, right? So I had to deliver. You know, be careful what you ask for. You know what I mean? But that was it was so much fun, because every single day, and you can ask Kaylee, because sometimes she would look, she goes, "You're right." I went, "Mm-hmm." But inside, I'm like, you know, because every single day presented the most wonderful challenge ever. And I knew exactly how I wanted Megan to be, or how I wanted the scene to be. What I didn't know was how I was going to deliver it. And I have learned in my career, after 30 plus years, that's okay. Let it go. Be in the moment, be in your body, let it go. The words mean nothing, they're just words. And now you know your words, you know, you memorize them. So that's the freedom, you know, and it was wonderful. It was, and I call Kaylee or text her every now and then, like, "What a stupid ass I would have been to say no." It's like, oh my gosh, it was just a wonderful experience. "Hi, little guy." Yeah.
That's my puppy. He was literally sleeping this whole time, and then he just switched positions. I love that. Yeah, it sounds like the relationship you have with Kaylee. I mean, I love that you guys had that instant chemistry. What was filming like with the rest of the cast, with Kaylee and the rest of the crew? Because I mean, I feel like we always say this about shows we love, but it really did seem like there was like so much chemistry there.
There was a lot of chemistry there. You know, casting did a very good job, and congratulations to our casting director, got nominated as well. We were all just happy to be there. We really were. And I have to give Kaylee Cuoco the credit, because she set the tone. You know, she's been in the business as long as I have been, and she just started earlier.
Yeah.
She knows how it goes, and she understands how fortunate we all are. And she understands that this is our job, and let's do it correctly, and let's take it seriously, and then we can have fun. And she also, whatever country we were in, always planned these outings. Oh my God, she could be the best event planner in the entire universe, this young woman. But seriously, she made sure that we were always looked after and together whenever we weren't filming. And it just created that bond, and we liked each other. We sincerely liked each other. Like Z, she's amazing. Zasha, she's amazing. Griffin is hilarious. You know, Yasha is a sweet, dear soul. I mean, I can go on and on and on about the entire cast. It's like we would work 10, 12 hours a day, and Kaylee would go, "Drinks at the bar." Okay. And everyone would show up, you know, at the hotel. But of course, I was the first one to go to bed. I was like, "Bye, y'all. I need my sleep." You know, but so you wake up and refreshed and you're just going to work with friends. And that sounds like a cliche, but that's what it was. That was the environment. There was no infighting, there was no jealousy, there was no insecurity, all that stupid crap that happens because we're just extremely sensitive human beings. That's what makes us artists, you know what I mean? But it was none of that. And for also to have a younger cast too, to be able to not let that come in, that was incredible too. So I was impressed by the younger cast as well, and I think it's just because we had fun, we just sincerely had a good time.
I love that. I always love hearing those stories of like, when you watch a show, you hope that the people behind the scenes really did love each other. And so the fact that you really did is like, as a viewer, it's just very satisfying. And this show, I feel that the Flight Attendant, I think it would have done well no matter what. But for me anyway, and a lot of my friends that watched it, I feel like the fact that it, was during the pandemic when none of us could really travel and none of us could have this escapist moment. Tell me a little bit about the timing of the show, and if you guys ever, I'm assuming that when you were filming, you had no idea that COVID was coming, but do you agree that there was something to this series that was just like escapism for so many people in a much needed moment?
I never thought of it like that, to be honest with you. I will say this, and I hope she doesn't get mad at me. I love you, Kaylee. But I remember not everybody, but a lot of people in our company was, as a dancer in our company. Anyway, I'm sorry. Whatever, in our company, was worried about the shutdown. Who's gonna watch it? And then Kaylee goes, "Are you kidding? Nobody's gonna have nothing to do. Everyone's gonna watch this." And I go, "Really?" She went, "Yep." And she believed. She just believed it to be. And we couldn't believe the numbers. I remember we all were like calling each other and screaming and crying. And, I know they don't want to admit that, but I'm old. I can admit that. I can admit that now. We're like, "Oh my God, it's just like, so happy because it really was a project from, I don't want to say the heart because that sounds cheesy, but it was from everything you wanted a project to be, and then people liked it and watched it. You're like, "Oh my gosh, this is great," and what's really awesome about this project, I didn't read not one review. I didn't care. I did not care. And
how did you get to that point? How did you get to that point about not caring about the reviews for this project?
Because I didn't care if people liked it or not. And that's the honest truth, because I liked it and I had a good experience, and, I can read reviews and not get down. I think because I was a choreographer and I was already used to being critiqued, and you kind of go, "Oh, well." Oh, they hated that tour. Oh, well, what's the next gig? And so it's,
right.
That, you may get down for a moment and then you just I just brush it off and people just go, "How do you do that?" And I said, "Yeah, be a dancer." Because actors think they have the ultimate, handle on rejection. No, dancers have it far worse. But I just didn't care. I really didn't care because I knew I did good work. And I knew that the entire company did good work. And it's just we all had a great time and experience. And when you're on a project, when you don't have a great time and don't have a great experience, it taints everything. And the worry comes in. And then you do look at the reviews and say, "Oh, they hated it too," or, "Oh, they liked it." It's yeah. It's like that. So it was very freeing. It was very, very freeing, you know. I had that experience on Fearless, White Man Can't Jump, The Take. I go back to High Maintenance. I love that. I didn't care what anybody said. I didn't care what anybody said. I had a great time at summer camp and great memories and got a few good friends along the way. And now we go back to school. It's like that, you know?
Yeah. And so, now this show, you were nominated and the show has been nominated for many awards. Tell me a little bit about how it feels now, you know, getting awards or nominations. Are you still just as grateful as you were back when you were nominated for Fearless? How does it feel for you as an artist when you're nominated for your work?
It feels amazing. It feels humbling. And it still stuns me and brings me excuse me.
Now you're going to make me emotional.
It brings me to tears of ultimate appreciation. And it goes back to my days as a dancer. When another dancer that you know can kick ass and put you to shame with their talent goes over to you, walks to the back of the line because they're in the front, you know, and says, "That's what was really good." You just go, "Thank you." You know, or even the other dancers, whether you have a solo or whether you're dancing in a group, you know when another dancer kicked ass. And at the end of the number, everyone goes over to you and they hug and you're like, "Oh my God, that was so good. That was so good." Or, "Oh my God, you got so much better. Look, your hard work paid off." Or any of those things. I remember that. And that's what it feels like to me, because it is our peers voting. It is the industry voting. And you just want to say thank you, and you want to hug every single person that voted for you. You know what I mean? And voted for our show, and voted for Kaylee, and voted for casting, and voted for direction, and voted for writing, and the music, and the title credits, and all the nominations that we got. You know, the emotion wasn't just for me, it was for our show. It was for our show. We did something special, you know, and so it's really nice. And sometimes I don't understand when other fellow actors, when they got nominated, they go, "It's an honor to be nominated." I go, "Why are you so calm?" It's like, you know, not everyone gets nominated. You know what I mean? You know, and so it's also nice that after all these years, and I never thought of giving up, that everyone still stayed with me. And that's nice.
That is really nice. That's more than nice. That's a beautiful thing. And I think, so much of it, I think, is your energy, the fact that you still now are getting emotional about award. Like, I think that we think a lot of actors are jaded, right? When you get to a certain level in your career. So seeing you, you know, still feeling that is amazing, because like you said, I think there are a lot of people who just kind of take it for granted. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you remain so passionate about what you do. And you do a lot, you work a lot, you're always working. I know you mentioned that your home life is very important to you, and keeping that balance. I'm curious for you, as somebody who's been vocal about mental health and taking care of yourself, how do you do that? How do you protect your own mental health, and how do you keep your own balance in your life with, you know, all of the acting and all of the different projects that you do? How do you maintain that mental health for Rosie as the person?
First and foremost, I believe in professional help. I
Yes.
I am a phone call away or email away to my doctor. I am diligent in that regard, in the maintenance of it. And it's not easy. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. But I am diligent, and I hope everybody else does the same or is inspired to do the same, because it's necessary. If you're a diabetic and your doctor tells you you need insulin, and if you say, I'm all right, I could take care of myself, 9 times out of 10, you'll probably die, and a slow, painful death. So it's the same way. You have to take care. You have to be logical about it and sensible about it. And if you can't be logical and sensible about it, that's an indication that you really do need professional help. And it's okay. And I struggled many years in the closet with my mental health. And I'm so glad that the stigma is dissipating. It's going away. Still there. It's somebody, if I say, oh yeah, I have mental health issues. Oh, you do? And I go, don't look at me like that. It's okay. It's okay. I make sure that my home life is secure. I don't allow casual friends enter my home, because that's my sanctuary. It's my sanctuary, and I make sure that I know who are my friends. And I make sure, well, one, I never cared about it, but even more so, I don't get caught up in the fabulous life, or, that can affect your mental health as well in this industry. You need real life. You need real life experiences, and you need to cocoon yourself with loving, caring people who have your best interests at heart. And success to me means security in regards to a roof over my head, money in the bank, savings, but also a loving partner, a supportive partner, loving family and friends, supportive, loving family and friends, and also making sure that I can reciprocate that I can be just as loving and supportive to them. That helps my mental health as well, because sometimes when you do have mental health issues, you become so needy. And when you don't give what you're getting, those giving may go away. Or you may hurt them because they're exhausted, because they need as well. And so all those things help my mental health. Having good representation as an artist. Because if your reps do not believe in you as much as you believe in yourself, and more so, it's going to tear you apart. It's going to tear you apart. So it's very, very important for that support, because we're sensitive beings, artists, whether you're an actor, writer, painter, whatever. We're so sensitive, and that's what makes us good, because we are able to access emotions, or a certain emotion, at a drop of a hat. Not everybody can do that. And then repeat it at a drop of a hat. You know what I mean? We have the ability to fake real life. It's real. So it's really important, because that means we're like wearing our emotions on our sleeves, whether we know it or not, whether we're conscious of it or not. So you need people around you to take care, and you need to take care of yourself and be responsible as well. You know?
You gave me an aha moment. I'm like, next time my boyfriend calls me sensitive, I'm going to be like, Rosie Perez says that as an artist, it's a good thing that I'm sensitive. Okay. Yeah, and I love also that you talked about keeping, having normalcy in your life, because I feel like I have so many friends in New York who are like, I saw Rosie Perez in the grocery store the other day or on the subway, and I love that you still have maintained your life in New York and some sense of normalcy whenever you can. That's, I think, a beautiful thing.
Well, you have to, because you're playing life, right? It's an imitation of life is what our job is, right? Yeah. And if you don't experience life, you're never going to grow as an artist. If you seclude yourself in your fabulous mansion and surrounded by your fabulous friends who are emotionally stunted, how are you going to get better? You know what I mean? You have to grow in order for your craft and your talent to grow.
Yes. And you also, I know you mentioned, obviously professional help, but as far as self-care, what does self-care look like for Rosie Perez? I know you mentioned boxing. What are the things that you do that make you feel like you're taking care of you?
Sleep. I still don't sleep enough, but sleep is pivotal. Exercise is pivotal. Even though I suffer from, I know this sounds weird, but I'm allergic to the sun. It damages my skin, and I've had a lot of skin issues from it. But you need that vitamin D. You need that light. You need to get out. You need to sit in the sun, wear a hat. Seriously, being around other living beings that are not human beings is important to me. Being kind is important to me. That helps me. Being charitable helps me, because our profession is so solitary, and you can get so self-absorbed, and you may not have time to spend with your friends and give. So being charitable, you give to the world and making the world a better place. That helps me a lot. I know that sounds weird, but it does. Because I do worry about the world. I do worry about the world a lot. And sometimes that can heighten my neuroses. And so giving back helps. Being proactive in that regard. Trying to eat well. I love food. I love food. It is my biggest expense in the entire universe. I love it. I could wear the same clothes. I don't care. I really don't care. I really don't care. I could buy a pair of pants from Costco and not give two poo-poos about it. I don't care. Of course, when you're on the carpet, you want to look fabulous. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Besides that, I don't care. Just as long as my hair looks cute, I am fine. You know that as a boricua. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, exactly. You're like, listen, I just want some tostones, and I don't really care for what I'm wearing. It's fine.
Yeah. But I gotta watch it with the food.
Yeah,
I have to watch it. And that's also taking care of myself too.
That's true. But indulge every now and again. But then you're like, okay, I gotta take care of. I gotta get back to the healthy eating right now.
I didn't trust me. Yeah, I know. Most people go, I have one cheat day. No, I have a couple. Life's too short to drink the house wine. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I love that saying. So I know you mentioned, I can't believe it that it's been over 30 years, but you built an incredible career for yourself, and you've been in this industry for a while. Do you feel like you've seen the industry change either for the better or the worse? How do you think that things are different now for an actor or for an actor of color now versus when you were first starting out?
Well, when I was first starting out, the racism and sexism was sky high. And I really felt that I was amongst the few voices going, hello, why isn't anyone talking about this? And then I had reps back then telling me to tone it down, so I fired them.
Yes, I love it.
So, the industry is entering a certain consciousness that is necessary and long overdue. And there have been a lot of wonderful positive changes that have occurred. And we still have a very, very, very long way to go. It's, and I tell people, whether they're young or old, it's so easy to be bitter, but it's just as easy to be better, and instead of being so bitter, if you can't let that bitterness go, let it fuel you, but in the most positive and most effective way. Not saying that you need to quiet it down or tone it down. It's just how you articulate it and how you maneuver to get what we all need. And with bitterness in your heart, you're not going to be as effective. So don't be bitter, be better. Be better at it. Learn how to be better at obtaining what we need to obtain. And I'm seeing that happen. I'm seeing that happening now. And it's really a great, fascinating thing. It really is. But we have so much more of a way to go. And part of the bitterment that exists is also the cancel culture. Some things need to be canceled, but I would say that 98% of the things that people are trying to cancel out, it's like, what are you doing?
Yep.
That's not the real fight. That's your personal issue, and it's not going to get canceled. It's not going to change. It's just, it's methodical. It unfortunately does take time, and it takes planning, and it takes strategy, and it takes tenacity. And I hope folks start understanding that, because you can yell and scream all you want to, but if you don't have a plan of action to back it up, nothing's going to happen, And, but the industry is getting better, but it's not good enough by far. Even if you look at the simple little tiny details of when you read a script for the first time, they will always point out the ethnicity of people of color. It's very rare. I would say it's probably 99.8% of the time they do not ever mention that the character is white. Why is that? Because maybe if they did, they were like, oh, crap, there's a lot of white people up in this movie. There's a lot of white people up in this TV show. Oh, if they pointed it out,
yep,
maybe they'd think twice. Because people are people. People are people. And we all live life, and we all have life experiences, and why does this character have to be white? Well, because they live in the suburbs. Oh, people of the color don't live in suburbs? Oh, no, that's because they're a stockbroker. Excuse me?
Yeah.
Oh, that's because they come from a Protestant family. Really? You don't know any Latino Americans or African Americans or Asian Americans that are Protestant? What are you doing? Wake up. Wake up. The alarm has been ringing for years. When are we going to be able to turn it off and enjoy the morning? And for those who are not of color, seriously, if those who are not color who are listening and see my passion, is because racism hurts. Sexism hurts. And I don't want to be bitter. but I'm not going to forget. And I'm not going to let you forget it. But I don't want to be mean about it either. You know, if you need guidance, come on along. But you got to do the work. It's not our problem, it's yours. You got to do the work. You know, let us all enjoy it. We're not trying to say we want to take over. We just want to be able to sit at the table because we deserve that seat. That's it. It's just that simple.
Ooh, you're saying so, I mean, thank you for using your voice and for always, as you said, from the beginning, you've always used your voice for more people like us to appear on screen. And I appreciate it. And I know so many people do. And you're right. It's not up to you. It should be up to the people, you know, who are making these decisions. So I hope someone listening really took that message to heart. As we're coming to close on your career retrospective, I'm sad, but I do want to know one thing I've been wondering as I've been listening to you is I wonder if Rosie Perez now was looking back at Rosie Perez when she was first starting out in this industry. What advice would you give her? What would you tell her if you could look back and give her any words of wisdom with what you know now?
Work even harder. Relax. And enjoy the ride even more.
I love that. Oh, I love that. And I feel like young Rosie would listen. She would listen to that advice.
Another advice, let the good people in more. There's a lot of good people that I have encountered along the way and I just didn't trust.
I love that.
Let more good people in. And I've been doing that, and that's why my career still keeps getting better and better. So I'm letting the good people in.
The good people. Kaylee Cuoco made her way in. She made
And look at this example of changing the industry. Flight attendant, you know, perfect example.
Yep. Perfect example. My last question is, what is next for you? I know you mentioned that you're in Spain filming. I'm curious if you have any other projects coming up, and also if there's anything that you still want to do, any dream projects that you would love to take on, hopefully in the future.
I'm working with the writer and director of Homeland, Gideon Raff.
Yeah.
And with Bamboo Productions over here in Spain for a Apple TV for a new television series. And it's exciting because it's such a smart project in the sense that they've plucked out really fine actors from all Latin countries to come together to make a television series.
Wow.
You know? Yeah.
I can't wait for that. I know, I can't wait to watch.
It's so amazing. And it's a crime thriller, and working with Gideon Raff has been outstanding and amazing. And I hope every actor in the industry has a chance to work with him. And Bamboo Productions, they have such a big heart. There's this production company here in Spain, and working with Carlos and Ramon Campos and all of them. And oh my God, the crew is hilarious and passionate. And even like, I can't wait to go to work because I can't wait to start cracking jokes with Lara, who's head of, the makeup department, or Olga, who's the costume designer. I mean, it's been wonderful so far. I hope we're doing good work because I'm having such a good time. It's hard work, but I like that too,
Yeah.
So I have that, and I have a couple of other irons in the fire that I don't want to jinx yet. So stay tuned. And my other projects is that I'm, fixing the basement of my house, redesigning that. And that's something I wanted to do forever. And my husband's a wonderful guy doing it, and we might get another cat. So that's another project that we're working. I know this sounds silly, but that's part of my life, not just work.
Yeah.
Well, to me,
Yeah.
that's my career too. My life, my personal life is a career in a sense as well. So those are the other projects that I'm doing.
Oh, well, thank you on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, on behalf of myself, on behalf of, I just thank you so much for sharing your career and yourself and so much of your joy and your passion with all of us and with your fellow performers. This has been such an incredible conversation, and I can't wait to watch this Apple TV series. That sounds amazing. It sounds so good. So thank you so much for taking the time, and congratulations on an incredible career that just keeps on hitting the next steps.
Thank you very much. And I really enjoyed our talk. You're very
Me
good.
too. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. And as a reminder, if anybody wants to donate to help their fellow performers in need, you can in the comments below.